Howdy, my name's Ben, and today we'll be identifying the rootinest, tootinest domain this side of Tasha's, the domain of order. Clerics of the domain of order worship the very essence of law, seeing it as the only thing keeping them from unbridled, uncontrolled chaos. Now, I think the roleplay opportunity for this archetype by itself is awesome. I love the little blurb at the beginning talking about how much discipline is important to the order domain. And I think it'd be really, really neat to think about characters who care so much about this discipline and why they do. Did they maybe previously fall from grace and now they follow the domain of order because that's the only thing keeping them from their lowest point? So already the flavor is a win here, so let's go ahead and get into the abilities. At first level, you gain domain spells. These spells are added to your spell list, and you always have these spells prepared. In a lot of cases, the spells that are listed here are going to help you do what you're basically trying to do with the Order Domain Cleric. And Heroism in particular is going to be key in early levels to activate your other ability. I'll be talking more about these spells towards the end of this video as they bring up interesting questions about what exactly this archetype is trying to do. Also at first level, the Order Domain gets extra proficiencies. They gain proficiency in heavy armor, and then they also gain proficiency in one skill of their choice between Intimidation and Persuasion. I think these additions are great. The Order Domain is really fighting to be a melee cleric, so that heavy armor is very, very helpful. And it is really nice to get that extra skill proficiency on top of it. You'll see, especially in the early levels, with the abilities that this archetype gets, that it's really trying to be like God Cop, like this guy who busts down doors and tells people to put their weapons down in the name of the Lord. The final, and probably my favorite of the abilities that this archetype gains at first level is called Voice of Authority. Whenever you cast a spell that targets an ally, you can allow that ally to spend their reaction to make a weapon attack against a creature of your choice. Now, it's important to note that if a spell you cast affects more than one person, you choose which person makes the attack. Now, this is awesome. I personally love any ability that adds a new dynamic to the game and also allows a sort of cooperative sense between the party. And this fulfills that to a T. This is great, especially if you have a barbarian or a rogue in the party. You can really enable them to deal a lot of damage very consistently. Because this ability has no limit besides the spell slots you expend, this archetype is really trying to get you to use those spells in that way. So probably some of your darling spells early on are going to be Heroism, which is really nice because it was added by your domain, and Bless. Both of these spells will not only key off the ability, but the spell is cast before the attack happens. So especially Bless can actually aid the attack that is keyed off of this ability, which is a really neat synergy. Speaking of, this ability synergizes really interestingly with other abilities later in the archetype. Moving right along, we have this archetype's second level channel divinity called Order's Demand. Each creature of your choice within 30 feet needs to make a wisdom saving throw. Any who fail are charmed by you until the end of your next turn or until they take damage. When people are charmed in this way, you can order them to drop their weapons as part of the charm. Now, this is the channel divinity every God Cop would use before they start reading you your Miranda rights. It fits perfectly into the flavor, and I just wish it were a little better. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's great for diffusing combat situations, but if combat breaks out anyways after that, then this ability doesn't really hinder them all that much. Because yes, you can get the baddies to drop their weapons, but because of the action economy in this game, when it gets to their turn, they're just going to pick it right back up at no cost to themselves. Furthermore, the charm doesn't last long at all. So all this really gives you time to do is either get in one word before a fight starts to maybe try to shut it down, or a turn to position, which is advantageous, obviously. But at the end of the day, the real problem I have with this is I don't see it coming up that much. Maybe I'm missing something. Let me know in the comments below. At 6th level, the Order domain gains the ability Embodiment of Law. Anytime you cast an enchantment spell of 1st level or higher, you can choose to cast it as a bonus action, as long as it normally casts an action to cast. Now you can do this a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier before you must expend a long rest. Now on paper, this is really, really great. It helps enable the Order domain to be what it's trying to be, especially in the later levels, which is a melee cleric. Furthermore, this means you can cast spells like Heroism as a bonus action. You still get to attack, and you still get to see your 1st level ability. If your DM allows Acquisitions Incorporated content, Motivational Speech is also an excellent spell for this, because it's basically heroism with a little bit more, and it affects your whole team. Now this is where I actually start having problems with the Order domain, unfortunately, because yes, you can use heroism and still see that 1st level ability, but the problem I see is that there aren't a lot of enchantment spells on the cleric spell list, and most of them are trying to command or control the creature you're casting it on. So really, this spell is telling you to cast Command or Compulsion as a bonus action, which is really cool, but then you can't cast any leveled spell with your action, meaning you can't cast a spell on your ally, and you can't key off that 1st level ability, which you've been trying to do and synergizing with all the way up to this point. Honestly, this is going to start to be a real breaking point for the Order domain, where they're trying to fight between controlling the enemies on the battlefield and aiding their friends in commanding them to attack. This is also the last ability that I see having any God Cop energy, which is pretty disappointing. At 8th level, you gain Divine Strike. When you make a weapon attack once on each of your turns, you can deal an extra 1d8 psychic damage. At 14th level, this increases to 2d8. Now, once again, the Order cleric is being the best melee cleric it's trying to be. Psychic damage is a really good damage for this Divine Strike to be, but this ability does start some inconsistencies with the Blessed Strike variant feature that clerics also got in this book. But I can't really talk about that until we get to the 17th level feature, so let's just jump to that. At 17th level, the Order domain gains Order's Wrath. Whenever you deal Divine Strike damage on your turn, you can curse that target until the start of your next turn. If an ally deals damage to that target before then, you can have them deal an extra 2d8 psychic damage. Sweet. So once again, on paper, the Order domain is living up to the themes that it's been building. It's a melee cleric who synergizes with its team. So we see that you can hit somebody and mark them to set up to be knocked down by somebody else. With this capstone ability, what the Order domain cleric really wants to do is mosey on up to a bad guy who's already next to an ally, hit him with Divine Strike to curse him, and then bonus action, use the 6th level feature to cast Heroism on that ally so that you can immediately see that spike damage. Now once again, here's the problem. This archetype really wants to do that. That feels like this is the setup for what this is trying to do. But there are so few enchantment spells that actually aid your allies. And furthermore, from the domain spells, you hardly get any of them. Most of your spells are those that affect the enemy in some way. So this creates a real dichotomy with the archetype. It's trying to live 2 lives at once. It is both the good cop and the bad cop. And unfortunately, the final nail in the coffin for God Cop is Divine Strike. As I mentioned earlier, Divine Strike would cause a problem with this capstone ability, because by the wording of the capstone ability, if you take the variant feature, Blessed Strikes, you cannot actually, rules as written, key off your capstone ability. Now, any sane DM would allow you to use Order's Wrath with Blessed Strikes, but this is also a problem. Because cantrips scale with your level, it makes way more sense if you are getting up to 17th level to take Blessed Strikes, take that extra 1d8, and plop it onto your Toll of the Dead or your Sacred Flame. Now, yes, these are saves, and they're save or suck, but you are guaranteed to deal more damage with that ability than you would possibly be doing with a melee strike. Now, there's obviously the question of magic items, but I figure if your cleric is getting a magic sword because he's a sword guy, then he would also get a magic super cool holy symbol because he's a holy symbol guy. So the magic item point is kind of moot. Furthermore, all of the cantrips you can do at a range, which means you can set up allies for your 1st level ability much more easily. All in all, what this means for me is that Blessed Strikes is actually the superior option to Divine Strikes, which directly conflicts what this archetype was feeling like it was supposed to be doing. Now, don't get me wrong. I do like this archetype. There's a lot of cool abilities in here, but I only give it so many gripes because it's so close to being so good. But because of the conflict in abilities, and because they gave it Divine Strikes, even though Blessed Strikes is just better for this archetype, I don't really think there's a lot of wiggle room here. I have to give it 3 out of 5 Cauldrons. It's still very good, but not better than anything already available for the Cleric. If you like this video, it's actually part of a series called Identify. We are currently going through the Tasha's archetypes and explaining how they work and giving our opinions on them, much like this video. If you like this video, consider liking it. And if you like the kind of content we're making here, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for making it this far in the video, and we hope to see you on your next short rest.